You know, after several weeks in a row of covering massive giant events and whatever the hell is going on with the X-Men, it feels really good to have a week where nothing's really happening. A week where I can just talk about whatever I want. A week where neither DC nor Marvel are doing anything that's really worth mentioning. I'm still going to do an indie showcase this week. Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and this is Comic Class, the show on this channel every single week where we just geek out about comic books. And yes, I do enjoy talking about Marvel and DC, but not every single week. I need a break every now and again. And in all honesty, if you are only reading Marvel or DC, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. You are ignoring a huge chunk of the comic book industry that's providing some of the best stories out there in the comic book industry. So it has been a long time since we did an indie showcase on this week, but enough is enough. I'm coming in here and today I'm spotlighting not one, not two, but 3 books from the indie community that I have been wanting to talk about forever. In fact, many of these I actually have talked about before, but very quickly in passing because they were part of our top 100 comics of the year list. So I would come in here, tell you why it was one of the best books of the year, and then I had to kind of get out. I had to quickly move on to whatever the next number was. But no, today we're actually going to take some time and talk about every single one of these books. Now, the first one that I'm going to talk about is a book that a lot of people out there had not heard of, but when I talked about on our top 100 comics of the year list, I had so many people contacting me and saying, yeah, what was that thing? Hold on, I want to know more about that. Because it is an insane concept for a book. It's one of those concepts that if you just told someone this is what this book is about, they would look at you and go, that's not real. You're just making stuff up right now. This is the dark, gritty continuation of Calvin and Hobbes. You heard me. Yes, I am talking about Spencer and Locke. This is a book that when it came out, not only was it in our top 100 comics of the year list, it was also way up there on our top 10 moments of the year list because it had one of the best moments from any comic that I read that entire year. And I had so many people contacting me going, okay, I hadn't read that, but that moment sounded so good. I want to go and check this series out. And to those people out there, I would like to say, I warned you at the beginning of the video, if you have not read this book, don't listen to this moment. But it got you guys to read the book, so I guess it's okay. So Spencer and Locke, it's this dark, gritty noir story that is all about this detective who he's got some kind of a mental condition. They never really say what it is, but it's sort of like schizophrenia because he has an imaginary friend. An imaginary friend is a blue panther that follows him around and does all these cases with him, except this imaginary friend, it's been with him since he was a child. It was this stuffed animal that he had as a kid, and that stuffed animal basically saved his life. Because when he was a kid, his dad wasn't present, he lived in this terrible neighborhood, his mom was an alcoholic who used to abuse him, there were some other things that happen in there that are so dark that I'm not going to mention them because they would instantly demonetize this video. But yeah, he had a really rough upbringing to say the least. So his escape was, he ended up creating this imaginary friend. His blue panther stuffed animal came to life and the two of them went on wonderful magical adventures together. Sort of the things that you would read in, you know, the morning paper funnies section. It's been so long since I've read any of those, I forgot what they were called. What are the cartoons called in newspapers? Newspaper cartoons? Is that what they're called? Does anyone under the age of 20 know what the hell I'm talking about? It's where Garfield comes from. Now, when I was a kid, I loved Calvin and Hobbes. I thought that series was hilarious when I was growing up. But as I got older, I began to realize it's not just funny. This series is smart. This thing is genius. So it had a huge fan base out there, so I'm sure many of you Calvin and Hobbes fans are listening to this description and going, okay, so when he was a kid, he had this big stuffed jungle cat that came to life, and the two of them went on big adventures. Yeah, it's totally just Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, here's the thing. I said this was basically the dark continuation of Calvin and Hobbes. I wasn't just saying that because you can draw comparisons between the stuffed jungle cat that comes to life. No. This thing is 100% meant to be the dark continuation of Calvin and Hobbes. It isn't just a coincidence that the two of them overlap in that one area. No. This thing wears on its sleeve. No. This is the dark, gritty, real-world take on Calvin and Hobbes. And I have talked about this many times. I typically hate the dark, gritty, real-world takes on things for multiple reasons. One is because a lot of those things tend to be bad. It's because a lot of the people out there who make those things, they think, yeah, if I just have them swear and I shoot in grayscale, then yeah, automatically, it's genius. That's all you need to make this thing good. If you want to make this thing taken seriously, just have people swear and make it very gruesome in there. Yeah, no, you actually have to do work to establish a story. You actually have to take your time to set up characters and establish connections and bonds and make us actually care about the characters in there. And you actually have to also have a reason for why you're making this a dark, gritty version of something. Like, you can't just go, oh, that was a fun thing, so now let's make it a not fun thing. Yeah, you can't just do that. There needs to be a reason behind it. And this series has such deep characters. This series establishes so much about this world and the connections between everyone within it. And it also has a really good reason for why it would grab Calvin and Hobbes and turn it into this. It checks off all those boxes of why you should do a dark, gritty, real-world take on something that was never meant to be taken in that way. As I said, the character of Locke, when he was growing up, he used this stuffed animal as an escape, as a way to get away from the harsh reality that he was living within. So all these big magical adventures and the overactive imagination that you would see in Calvin and Hobbes, it was serving a purpose in here because he needed that stuff. He needed a big stuffed animal to come to life and support him, because otherwise he wasn't going to survive. So it takes the premise of Calvin and Hobbes and puts it in a setting where it would also work and also seem necessary to the character that they have established in here. And I'll just go ahead and say, the friendship between Locke and Spencer, it's great. When you see Locke as a little kid and he's going out there on these adventures with Spencer, yeah, it does have this like childlike wonder to it. It does have that same whimsy that Calvin and Hobbes had. But that is there to be juxtaposed against the harsh things that are actually happening to him. So it makes the things that are actually happening to him seem so much more effective. It makes them seem so much darker. Like they really pack so much more of an impact because you're seeing what Locke wants to escape into being immediately juxtaposed with what he can't escape from. I think that is set up incredibly well. But when Locke grows up, Spencer is also there, but now Spencer isn't this big cartoon animal. Spencer is also being drawn now with this more gritty look to him, and he almost looks like Blacksad. If you've ever read the French comic Blacksad about the big panther that's a detective in like 1950s America, yeah, it sounds like a weird concept, but that's actually a great series as well. If you want a good detective series, Blacksad is amazing. But yeah, he's kind of being drawn like Blacksad. And you've got this giant panther in a trench coat going on these cases with Locke, and they actually still have this really good rapport. But it's no longer like the childlike whimsy and childlike wonder. Yeah, Locke is now firmly rooted in this harsh world that they have built up around him, but Spencer is there kind of still to be a bit of levity. He's still there to try and provide Locke with a little bit of hope, with a little bit of life, to try and pull him away when Locke starts to go too far. But he now feels like a real three-dimensional person. He kind of just feels like the buddy cop who is there to be the good cop to Locke's bad cop. Except that there is no good cop or bad cop. It's all one guy having an argument within his own head. I love the relationship that they have established between these characters. And the first volume of Spencer and Locke, there were so many other characters in there, and every single one of them was meant to be a character from Calvin and Hobbes, but adapted into this world that they had created. So they announced that Spencer and Locke 2 was going to come out this year. And it just wrapped up a few months ago, and I believe the trade came out like 2 weeks ago, I want to say. It was recent. That's one of the reasons I'm talking about this week, is because as soon as that trade came out, I was like, I kind of have to talk about this now. But yeah, they announced that they were going to do a second volume, and when they announced they were doing a second volume, I just looked at it and went, how? Because you used every character from Calvin and Hobbes in that first volume. What are you going to do now? They had to introduce a brand new villain. The brand new villain is Beetle Bailey. They're taking other characters from newspaper comic strips and adapting them into this same world. So they decided to go with Beetle Bailey, which has me really interested to see if we're going to get a volume 3. Like, who else are you going to include here? In fact, there's so many other characters in here who I kept looking at going, is that supposed to be someone else too? Is that like Dagwood right there? I think that might be Dagwood. When's the villain Funky Winkerbean going to appear in here? But the wildest thing about Spencer and Locke is just the fact that it works, and it works really well. Because, let's be real about this. Calvin and Hobbes versus Beetle Bailey in this dark, grizzled detective story, that's a crazy idea. That is a crazy idea. But there's a lot of crazy ideas out there in comics that you would think to yourself, oh, that shouldn't work at all. And then you read it and you go, I can't believe this is working. This is so crazy. How is this a thing? And yet I'm really enjoying this. You don't do that with Spencer and Locke. You don't sit there going, how is this a thing? When you read Spencer and Locke, you go, oh, of course this is a thing. Of course this is a thing. Because it just makes sense. In the world that they have established, the concept that I just described to you makes 100% sense. You read this and you don't sit there going, I cannot believe someone did this. You read it and you go, oh, well, of course someone did this. I'm surprised someone didn't do this sooner, because the way that they write all this, it just fits together like puzzle pieces. In this way, where it just feels like this was a story that always should have been told. And I know that is insane to say about dark, gritty Calvin and Hobbes versus dark, gritty Beetle Bailey. And yet they found a way to make them fit within this world so well that you don't question it at all. The entire time that you're reading it, it all just feels like this is exactly how this story would be told. It just feels like it makes 100% sense. That is like a magic trick to me. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up this week is because A, as I said, Volume 2 of Spencer and Locke just came out a few weeks ago, so yes, this is the perfect time for you guys to jump into the series. You have 2 full collections to start reading. But the other reason why is because this writer just released their 2nd series this week. It's called Going to the Chapel, and wow, is it different from Spencer and Locke. This is a very different type of story, but it's still good. I still really enjoyed it. Basically what the concept of Going to the Chapel is that this bride is about to get married and she's got cold feet. She doesn't know if she wants to do it. She's having those second thoughts. She's standing up there at the altar. Here's the thing, her entire family is loaded and she is wearing some very expensive jewelry at her wedding. And that story gets out to some unsavory fellows out there. So their wedding gets interrupted by these criminals who are coming in there to rob everyone. And then the police show up for this big standoff. And there's a couple of other twists that get thrown in there at the very end. I will not give any hints on it because I just realized anything I could say would probably spoil it. But it made me sit there and go, oh, I really want to know where this is going to go. Because in the beginning of this story, I was reading it going, okay, this is your typical, they're about to get married story. All right, I've seen stuff like this before. But then there at the very end, just like with Spencer and Locke, this writer had that ability to come in here and go, oh yeah, you've heard these stories before? Here's the twist. Okay, I'm invested now. I really do want to see where this goes. It's fun. As I said, Spencer and Locke, it's dark. It is a dark, dark series. This isn't dark, this thing's just fun. So yeah, go and check that out. Go and check out Going to the Chapel, their new series, but also check out Spencer and Locke if you have never read any of it before. Volume 1 is actually free if you have Comixology Unlimited. So if you want to check it out on Comixology Unlimited, that's the perfect place to check it out. Or go to your local comic book store and ask them to order you a copy so that you can support the physical releases. Next up is another series that last year wasn't just in our top 100, it was in our top 10. This book was way up there last year. I've mentioned this several times, but whenever we do the top 100 list every single year, I try to remove my personal opinion out of it. I know I'm not going to be able to take all my personal opinion out there because I'm the one making the list, but I try to look around and go, okay, how would everyone feel about this book? Let's try and think about how all the other audiences and all the other critics are talking about these series. So I try to take all that into accountability as well. But if it was my personal opinion, this wouldn't just be in my top 10 from last year. This would be in my top 3 from last year. I love this book, and it took a little bit of a break, and now it is back. It's been back for a few months now. They're still in the 2nd story arc right now, so it is a perfect time to jump on this book. The book I'm talking about is Crowded. Now this series is set in a future where everything is basically run by job share apps. You know, stuff like Rover or Uber or any of those other apps where if you need someone to do a thing, there's an app where you can contact someone to go and do a thing. And this series stars a protagonist who, she's like a lot of the people who live in this world, where she doesn't really have a steady job. She more just has 20 side gigs going all at once. All thanks to these job share apps. You know, if somebody wants someone to walk the dog, she can go and do that for them because she has that app. If someone needs someone to watch their house for them, she can go and do that for them because she has that app. So this is basically her entire life, is just waking up, doing whatever the apps tell her to do, just going throughout her life. She's also kind of an asshole. She is also a notorious a-hole who has burned every bridge in her entire life. Guess what? There is also an app in the future called Reaper, where if you just want to murder someone, you can do that. You just go out there and you basically just put a hit on someone on Reaper, and then anybody signed into the Reaper app can go, oh wait, you're offering how much money for this? Okay, well, if I see him, I guess I can kill him for you. Yeah, that is an actual app in this future that they've created. And you might hear that and go, how on earth could something like that get created? In the first like 2 or 3 issues, there is a moment where they stop and they actually explain how this app came into existence, and the explanation for how this thing exists actually makes sense. Like, I'm not saying it's a good idea to have this app. I'm saying how this app could actually go and become a legal thing. The process that they lay out in here goes, okay, yeah, I can actually see how if somebody, like, if our entire society followed that path, I could see us getting to that point where an app like Reaper exists. It is hands down one of the smartest explanations for a crazy idea I've ever seen in a book. And this series, it might not be obvious to some of you out there, but this is a comedy series. In fact, it's one of the best comedy series I've ever read in my entire life. And a good explanation, a good example of the style of comedy that's in here is that when the explanation is given for how Reaper exists, the explanation has to be given so the audience out there can understand this crazy idea. But everybody who lives in this world, of course, they know how that works. So they give this explanation from a group of nerds who goes, well, actually, the way that this came into existence is because of this. And our protagonist is sitting there going, yeah, I know. And then you see in this year, when it went over to this, it then became that thing. I know how this thing exists. And then after that, it then morphed into a new program that was called this. Are you mansplaining my own death to me? That's one of the best lines in any book I have ever read. I love that line. Because the way that it's set up in that one moment, it is like the perfect thing for that character to say in that moment to also sum up how weird it is that someone would have to explain this to this character, but they have to do it so the audience out there can understand it. It's that level of genius writing when it comes to this dialogue. But the thing that is the best part of this book, that is the funniest part of this book, that is the most charming part of this book, is our 2 protagonists. I said there was one protagonist, the one being hunted down by the Reaper app. But there's also an app where you can call up bodyguards, but she's kind of cheap right now, so she has to find someone to come and save her. But she doesn't really have a lot of options, so she has to get one with only 1 star. Someone who has one of the worst ratings on this Bodyguard app. But it turns out the Bodyguard is actually a major A-class badass. The reason why they have 1 star though is because she is also an asshole. But not in the same way that our protagonist is an asshole. Our protagonist is a self-centered asshole. Our protagonist is someone who just does whatever she wants for her and screw the consequences to everyone else out there. The Bodyguard is like, I'm going to protect you, but you gotta do whatever I say. Oh, well, that's kind of mean. Shut up about me being mean. This super spoiled party girl and this person who feels like if they went into basic training, they would make the drill instructor cry. It feels like that kind of dynamic with these characters, and that is a wonderful dynamic. The way that these 2 characters bounce off each other is brilliant. Like I said, the dialogue in here is so good, and it's one of those situations where our protagonist, the one being hunted down, she's constantly getting the 2 of them into more trouble. But our Bodyguard, they do have a code. They're not just going to dump this job. They took on this job, they're gonna see it through, no matter how much their life gets screwed up by having to be with this person who is the complete and total polar opposite of them. If you like odd couple comedies, if you like stuff like, say, Midnight Run, this is 100% the book for you. And I know I've been talking a lot of trash about our protagonist because she is a trash fire of a human being. However, she's still a human being. She's still three-dimensional. Even though this is kind of a cartoony world with a crazy sense of humor, everybody still kind of feels real. Like I said, our protagonist has just been this self-centered a-hole her entire life, but now she has this bounty on her, and because she has this bounty on her, she really does kind of have to stop and go, why would anyone want to do this to me? Oh right, because of all the things I did. So she does go on this big journey. I mean, it does start off small because trying to get a point across to her is like drilling through a concrete block, but it does start to work. She does start to kind of realize, wait, but this and oh no, but oh. And they do that a lot with these characters. You get a lot of depth to so many different characters in here, not just our two main characters, but even like some of the side characters who are just hunting them down. There's one character in here where they're just like this assassin that pops up for like one moment at the end of an issue. Next issue is just all of their backstory about how they got to this point. And that was great. Because think about this. This is an app where anybody can sign up there to become an assassin. Like, that's not something where you have to spend years hardening yourself before you can get to that point where you can be a cold-blooded assassin. No, it's just, I need some extra cash. Sure, I'll sign up for that. And they don't paint this as being like, oh yeah, just anybody can do that. There is this moment where someone has to get to that point where they have to decide, all right, I guess I can sign up for this thing. And yeah, you kind of feel for them. And this character who only popped up for like a couple pages in there suddenly has all this depth to them. It is weird to me how this book is able to do that perfect balancing act of really insane comedy, whole lot of heart in there. Like, there's never too much of one or the other. They are in perfect balance with each other. But yes, this series, the first trade of it wrapped up last year, and I have been waiting for it to start back up again. Yeah, we're about like halfway through the second storyline right now. So yeah, I'm glad to know that this thing is continuing. In fact, there's even rumors that it's been bought for a movie, and I actually think that this thing is perfect for a movie. Because as I was reading this, I went, this is like everything I love about Edgar Wright movies. Perfectly fit into a comic book. This is like everything that I love about his style of humor and action all rolled into a comic book. Because I also need to point this out, the art is great because there's so many action sequences in here, and the action sequences never feel like they're from a different book. Because you have this crazy comedic series, so you wouldn't really expect big action sequences in there. But when big action sequences come in here, they don't feel like the action sequences are being downplayed to fit the more comedic tone, but they also don't feel like something from a completely different genre. They're big action sequences that fit with this frantic tone of this book. They fit hand in hand in there, and the art style is so good in here that when I read these action sequences, I can hear sound effects. You can hear like the music that would be playing if this was a movie. You can hear that soundtrack blaring in your ear because it all just fits so well into what they have created here, and it's all laid out on the page in a way that just flows from panel to panel. Yeah, as I said, this was one of my absolute favorite books of last year. Highly recommend this. Now, the last series that we're going to talk about, I'm not going to talk that long about this for a couple of reasons. One is because I have actually talked about this a lot. Spencer and Locke and Crowded, those are two fairly new series. They have not had many issues out. They each have like 1 or 2 trades out there. So, you know, not a lot to draw from. However, this series has been going for years. And it has been on our top 100 comics of the year list every single year. Including before I even had the YouTube channel. Back when I was doing the top 100 comics of the year list over on Tumblr, back when that was still a thing, yeah, it was making the list over there. This is a wonderful series that I have fallen in love with, and it has now come to an end. This week, the final issue of Giant Days came out. Giant Days is this series about 3 girls going off to college, which also makes it sort of the perfect series to come in here and recommend right now to audiences out there because school is starting up. I know a lot of people out there are going to college for the very first time, and you might be looking for something that kind of speaks to you. Something out there that really you can relate to. And Giant Days, I really do believe that this is one of the best coming of age series about going to college I've ever read. And typically when you say coming of age story, you're thinking kind of serious. You're thinking of something that's gonna make you cry, something that's just gonna have so much overwhelming emotions in there that you just can't bear the weight of it all. No, Giant Days is a hilarious series. Giant Days is a comedy, but just like Crowd, it's a series with a lot of comedy and a lot of heart. It's got that perfect balance going for it, and this is a series that is all about characters. It is a series about recognizing these characters, getting to know who they are, understanding what their unique jokes are, understanding their unique life stories and the things that make them who they are and how that relates to all the other characters in here and the bonds that they have with each other, and watching those all build up over the course of several issues. Because when this series began, I'll admit, I thought it was good. I liked it. Didn't love it. I just kind of liked it. But I decided to keep reading it, and with every issue, I liked it a little bit more, and a little bit more. And then I stopped liking it, and then I loved it. And then I loved it a little bit more. And just the enjoyment that I got out of this book just kept growing and growing and growing. And the reason why is because, as I said, this is a series about watching these people kind of go through life. It is a series about watching the things that happen to them as they grow up, as they go through the several years of college. And that means establishing bonds with each other. That means getting to know more about themselves. That means figuring out what they want to do in life and working towards those goals and changing. And that's what this entire series is. And the more that that happens, the more that connections are established with other characters, the more these characters grow, the more you just fall absolutely in love with this entire cast. This series had so many characters that I was like, yeah, they're alright, but you know, there's alright, I mean, what's this guy's deal over here? Why do I even care about him? Cut to like 12 issues later, and it's like, that's my favorite character now. That's my favorite character, and I can list so many reasons why I absolutely love that character. There was one character in there, which his whole running gag is that he's kind of an old worldy kind of guy. He's kind of like a Hank Hill character, except in college. He's a guy who loves doing things with his hands, and he hates fancy technology. And I remember looking at him going, oh, okay, those jokes are gonna kind of get old and boring. Those jokes got better every single time that they came back around. That is a joke that kept getting funnier every single time that they leaned into that. There's a moment in which he gets lost in a city, and they're trying to figure out where they can find him. So they go, we need to figure out where you can make keys. And they find a hardware store where you can make keys, and sure enough, that's where he is. And that doesn't sound that funny. If you know these characters, that's hilarious. But as I said, I'm not going to come in here and talk about this that much because it has been in our top 100 comics of the year list every single year. In fact, I believe last year when it was in the top 100, I literally said I don't know what else to say about this book that I haven't already said. But I wanted to come in here one last time and not so much recommend it, but just pay respects to it. Because it went for 54 issues, and it was only supposed to go for 6. That's crazy to me. That you have a book that's like, you're gonna get a 6-issue miniseries, that's all you're going to get. And then the first couple issues did so well that they're like, let's make it 12 issues. Let's bump that up to 12. Cut to 54 issues later. And that is how long that thing went. And it is because it was able to pull in that audience and just make you love this cast of characters so much and get so invested with their stories and where they were going to go on their journeys that, yeah, you want to just continue that. And one of the things I love about this is that it didn't get canceled because like suddenly the sales tanked on it or something. It didn't get canceled because of business reasons. It got canceled because this is a story where these characters, they aged. They actually did go through school. I remember when they entered their final year of college, I kept thinking to myself, okay, how are you going to extend this thing? Are they all gonna like flunk out and then they gotta reapply and start back as freshmen or something? What's gonna happen with that? That's not, because every single thing that was happening when they started their final year of college was them going, I can't believe this is the final year of college, and oh man, we don't even talk that much anymore. Like I can't remember the last time we hung out and we're starting to grow apart. What's going to happen to us here in the final year of college? And I kept looking at that going, this ain't gonna No, that's not, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to end this series, that'd be weird. That'd be weird if you ended a series that people really enjoyed and still read. No, that's not going to happen. They're ending it because they hit the end of college. I have been saying for the longest time, I want books where characters grow and progress, and we got to see them like actually do that in this series. And it was so rewarding. And as I said, this is a series all about going off to college. And I know there's a lot of people out there who right now, this very week, are doing that for the first time. You might want something that kind of speaks to you in the situation that you're in right now. Giant Days. Giant Days is an amazing series for that. The only reason why I might say there might be some disconnect between the people reading it and saying, oh, I can see this working in my life. The only disconnect I can see is it's set in London. And I gotta say, it took me like 5 issues before I realized that. And I kept going, what the heck are they what is this slang that they're using? I've never heard anybody say a word like that. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, it's British slang. That's what it is. Okay, that makes 100% sense now. Okay, alright, I understand. So there are a few things that they're going to say and a few things that they're going to reference in this series that if you're American or just anywhere outside the United Kingdoms, you might not be able to 100% relate to that thing, but yeah, I still think that there's a lot of things that no matter where you are on the planet, if you have just gone to college, gone to any school, made friends, grown up, been in your early 20s, you're going to understand what they're going through. So yeah, I think this is one of the most relatable comedy series I've ever read, so just to pay it one last respect. I guess not one last respect, because it will be in our top 100 comics of the year list again. But just pay it one last respect. I want to come in here one last time and say, everyone go and check this book out. It's so darn good. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time since we came in here and talked about some indie books, but I always love talking about indie books. So if you have been wanting to try something different from Marvel and DC, wanting to try something different from superheroes, wanting to broaden your horizons, Spencer and Locke, Crowded, Giant Days. 3 very different series aimed at very different audiences. No matter what type of books you enjoy reading, you're probably going to enjoy at least one of those. So go out there, check some books out. And if there are some other indie books that you want to check out, let me know in the comments down below. But thank you guys for tuning in. You can always follow me around the web on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. And if you like these videos and want to see us talk more about comic book stuff or do movie reviews on the weekends, make sure you click that subscribe button. Also, if you do want to hear us talk more about Marvel and DC stuff, we are going to talk about Doomsday Clock number 11 over on Patreon this week. So if you want to check that out, then check out patreon.com/Professor Thorgy. I've got some feelings about that book, so let's just focus on Giant Days and how good that was, everybody. Bye, everyone.